Happy Devil's Tuesday. This is At the Point. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Bruce Zeman, talking NHL hockey, streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Boy, something happened earlier, Bruce, and you're going to have to explain to me about the Connor McDavid suspension.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. Happy Tuesday. It's a little chilly down here in Delaware, and all sorts of stuff going on in the National Hockey League as we bring in the first podcast of the new week. And as you mentioned, lots going on in the National Hockey League, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about this Connor McDavid suspension, because I'm kind of mystified by it. Tell me a little bit more.
So in the Oilers game against the Canucks, at the end of the game, Connor McDavid got tangled up with Connor Garland, and there was some, shall we say, extracurricular activities. And then at the end of the scrum, Connor McDavid cross-checked Garland in the face and was just suspended by the NHL's player safety division. 3-game suspension. He's going to forfeit $195,000 of his salary to the Players Assistance Fund. And there was another suspension too, Tyler Myers, but the one that I was going to discuss today was the Connor McDavid suspension, because you and I had spoken previously on the show about the lack of consistency with suspensions and just some questions on how things are meted out, I guess. And I just don't really understand this one. I really don't, because I guess you have to realize that as the face of the league, Connor McDavid probably has to keep that in mind. But to anybody that hasn't seen this yet, it was the end of the game, and Garland basically tackled McDavid, would not let him get up, all over him. It was clearly a penalty, which wasn't called. And at the end of it, McDavid just cross-checks him right in the face. And I have two opinions on this, and one which is probably what I should say, and the other one is a former player, certainly not at the NHL level, but I watched it a couple of times, and I understand the guy is the face of the league, but if you've ever played this game, anybody that's ever played the game, when someone's not letting you get up at the end of the game, it's a crucial moment. Sometimes you just have enough. And I'm not so sure if I was in that situation that I wouldn't have done the same thing. I mean, it's not something I'm proud to say, but I mean, if you've played the game, if the guy's not letting you get up, sometimes you got to send a message.
Well, yeah. And you know what? It's amazing. I think you hit it on the head. Like, we've been talking about this on this podcast many times, is the inconsistency of all these like player safety rulings and penalties and all that kind of stuff. I mean, honestly, I didn't think there was much there, but I mean, we've seen guys do a whole lot worse and just pay a $2,000 fine.
Well, this is also your premier star in the league, and you're taking him out of the lineup for a couple of games. And again, I've watched it probably a dozen times, and, it wasn't great. It was definitely not great. It was not a great hit. It didn't look good. But if you watch the play in its entirety, I'm not really sure how much more he was supposed to take there before he sent a message. And he did. And, while we were getting ready to go on here, McDavid announced, this is courtesy of the New York Times, by the way, that he's not going to appeal the suspension, even though he disagrees with it. But again, if the referees are not going to make the call, I mean, you need to watch the play, because he was being tackled, and Garland would not let him get up. And, as someone that's played the game for a long time, I'm not sure how much more he was supposed to take. I think maybe the 3 games were because it didn't look good. And again, if you watch it, it didn't. I mean, he cross-checked him right in the side of the face.
Yeah.
But will Garland do that again? I'm not sure. I'm not really sure, but he's gonna sit his 3 games, and I would love an explanation as to why. I mean, what he was supposed to do in that instance. Was he supposed to start waving a flag. I don't know. I don't know what he was supposed to do in that situation.
Yeah, well, you know what? To me, it's surprising because I always had this thought like he's the Michael Jordan of hockey, so they would protect him at all costs, and and he could do no wrong. If you remember when Michael Jordan played in the NBA, or let's say Wayne Gretzky, it's like giving Wayne Gretzky in a way a couple of games suspension for that.
Well, as someone that refereed too, again, not at the NHL level, but you got to make the call. The referees share some blame for that happening because they did not make the call. I mean, he was clearly being tackled. The guy would not let him get up, and he just had enough. And so, I don't agree with the suspension either. But that's that's the way we do things in the NHL, and that's $195,000 out of his pocket, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah,
but this is the modern NHL, the no hit league.
Yeah, well. Speaking of Vancouver, a lot of rumors about JT Miller and Peterson on the block. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm surprised to hear a lot of these rumors and different trade scenarios. What are your thoughts?
Well, here's the thing with Vancouver. This has been going on for a while. There's all sorts of components to this story. So we're talking about JT Miller and Elias Peterson, and they're both reportedly on the trading block. There's all sorts of issues going on in Vancouver. There's rumblings that there's issues between Miller and the coach, Rick Tocchet. There were some questions whether Peterson still wants to play there, although he came out yesterday, I believe, and said that he wants to stay there. There was a trade for Miller, apparently, with the Rangers that fell through over the weekend at the 11th hour. And he played in the game that he was not supposed to play in, had 2 assists, played really well. But there was also rumors of a rift between Miller and Peterson. So there's all sorts of stuff going on in Vancouver. And as you mentioned, both of them are reportedly on the trade block. And over the weekend, multiple reports saying that Miller was on his way to the New York Rangers. That apparently fell through. And so now there's a whole bunch of other teams, most notably the Devils and the Carolina Hurricanes, who are now reportedly suitors for Miller, who, if some people don't know this, he played for the Rangers. Yeah. And I believe he has trade protection, so he would have to okay any movement, but it's not a good situation in Vancouver, and I think the team is trying to clamp things down a little bit. They also sent out a message, I believe it was yesterday, league-wide, saying that you're not allowed to talk to our players because that's tampering. And so it just sounds like there needs to be some type of resolution with that situation. And interestingly enough, excuse me, Sam, another report came out this afternoon that I was reading that Brock Boeser may also be on the trade block. So there's all sorts of stuff going on with Vancouver. And again, that has been an organization that over the years has had some locker room issues, and then there was a fire sale, and then they sort of got things back on track, and now it seems that they may be back at that stage where they've got to calm things down there.
Yeah, and there were rumors that Tom Fitzgerald was getting involved, Devils GM. That he's kicking the tires on a JT Miller thing. I mean, I don't know where these rumors are coming from. I don't know how true they are, whatnot, but it should be interesting. I know Devils fans probably want Quinn Hughes. I mean, that's the obvious, but he's not going anywhere. He's the team's captain. They love him out there. I personally wanted the Brock Ness monster myself when the Devils were looking to trade for Timo Meier. I wanted the Brock Ness monster myself, but he stayed with Vancouver, had a great year last season, and right now it looks like Vancouver is trying to make some wholesale changes. Speaking of which, if you want to just dive into the New Jersey Devils, wow, they've fallen off a cliff. Finally, they lost the last 2 games outright at home, back-to-back against the Philadelphia Flyers and Ottawa Senators, teams that they should have beaten. And there's a lot of finger point going on right now. Where is the blame should go to? How the Devils can fix it? They've got one more day before Jacques Lemaire night at the Rock tomorrow against the Boston Bruins. What happened to the Devils? I mean, they just looked awful this past weekend.
They absolutely did. And I was texting you on Saturday. I was actually at the Flyers game, and really good seats. Kudos to my dad for buying us those tickets. It was a great experience. But if I'm being honest, that might have been one of the worst performances by a Devils team that I have ever seen. They played just awful. And again, I'm not picking on anybody, but the turnovers, the lack of hustle, the building was dead. And it seemed like they were going through the motions. And you're right, there's been a lot of finger pointing. There's been a lot of comments as to what they need to do. I have my own opinion, which I'm going to get into in a second, what they can do. I don't know. I think you're going to have stretches in any season where you have 4 or 5 game stretches where you're not playing at your best. You're having an issue, whether it's the power play, the penalty kill, your goaltending, your breakouts and everything. But they looked terrible on Saturday at the Rock. Awful. I mean, the turnovers were brutal. And they looked just as bad on Sunday against Ottawa. They're not scoring. And so this is tough. They need to get this straightened out. They're giving away points that could come back to haunt them come playoff time. But you're correct. I mean, they're giving away points to teams that they should beat. But I have to say, if we're being fair and we're looking at this as an analyst, as not as a fan, Philadelphia Flyers and John Tortorella played a great game on Saturday. I think the Devils had 13 shots on goal. They just got nothing going at all. And I remember looking at my dad, and I'm like, this is not going to end well. And if we're looking at a bunch of factors in this, again, I'm not a coach. I don't know what went on in the room, but I also was a little surprised against a big division rival that Jake Allen got the start in that game. I would have started Jacob Markstrom, and then I would have played Allen against Ottawa. He didn't play bad, but I didn't get the sense watching that game, being there. It was fun. I was in section 22. I was out the side where the Devils shot twice. They really didn't put too much pressure on the Philadelphia goaltender. They did have a goal waved off because they were offsides, but it was just not good. It was not a good performance, and I was hoping that they would come back and play better against Ottawa, because the game before the Flyers game, they had an atrocious loss to the Maple Leafs, just a terrible loss to the Maple Leafs. And I said, okay, well, Sheldon Keefe's former team, by the way, thought they were going to come out. I thought they would be up. I thought they would be fired up. They're playing the Flyers, and just nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
Yeah. All right. So last topic. We've talked about it before, but it's about the man, the myth, the legend, number 4, Scott Stevens.
Well, that's what I was getting to, Sam. I'm not really sure why he's not back in this organization at some capacity. If you go on the social media sites, which I've kind of stopped doing over the last couple of weeks, just because I don't know if I'm old and cranky, or it's just my patience is running thin with some of the stupid comments that are there. But, everybody's talking about the turnovers that specifically Luke Hughes has made. He's made some, okay?
Yep.
You've got arguably the greatest defenseman in NHL history that's been in your organization, that worked with people like Scott Niedermayer, Ken Danico, Brian Rafalski. Why would you not bring him back to mentor somebody who's supposed to be the cornerstone of your organization? And also, you've got some of the defensemen down in the minors that he could certainly help. I guess I just don't get it. I mean, I don't know, and maybe I need to look into this a little bit more. I don't know if maybe they have. And again, if they have and he said no, then, it's on me for not knowing that, I guess. But I haven't heard that they've reached out to him. I've done some checking around. I'm not really sure. I don't know if it's another player on the ice that's going to change things, or maybe somebody behind the bench. And this is not a shot at Sheldon Keefe by any means. But I'll tell you what, even if I was a really good coach like Sheldon Keefe, if you said, hey, I'm going to give you Scott Stevens to help work with the defenseman, you'd be an idiot to not do that. You really would. And just the whole mentality. I mean, earlier in the season, we talked about this too. If you looked at some of the hits on the Devils players and the lack of response, having Stevens behind the bench would address all those things. And I think it's something that they should at least look into. I don't know if you've heard anything, but I'm gonna make some calls in the next couple of days and see if I've heard anything. I have not heard anything that they've done that, but and just to see how they can fix this, because you're seeing red flags now that they need to address. And what people have to remember, there was a lot of stuff on social media over the weekend about the Hughes brothers and the turnovers. Jack Hughes, although he's a star, Jack Hughes is 23 years old. And his brother, I think, is 20 or 19. All right. First of all, Devils fans, they are going to make mistakes. If they're going to play here, they're going to make mistakes. What people have to remember, this is the best hockey league in the world. And you've got these two young kids. I mean, Jack Hughes is not even in his prime yet. Certainly his brother is not either. They are going to make mistakes. However, that being said, if you've got someone there that can mentor them and help them learn from these mistakes, you're going to be in a much better situation. Because I don't know about you, but what I'm seeing now, I guess maybe it's a good thing that it's happening now and it's not happening during the playoffs, because you just can't play like this. You can't have 13 shots on goal in a game at this level. And I don't know. I had a great time at the game, but having been there and see, you can see what some of the fans are talking about, because some of the turnovers were just, they were turnovers you wouldn't see in a men's league. And you just can't have that happen. It was just not good at all.
Yeah. Totally agree. Got to get back to the fundamentals. And who knows? You may see Scott Stevens on Jacques Lemaire night tomorrow night at the Rock when the Devils take on the Boston Bruins. Just a little bit of a promo plug, Bruce, if you don't mind. Game Day Live and Devils After Dark after the game. Also, the State of the Fan Address, normally at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, with Nick Villano at pucksandpitchforks.com, and I will actually be moved, preempted to Thursday. Yes, so Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, the State of the Fan Address. Well, Bruce, thank you for your time. We're going to get out of here, and stay warm, my friend. Stay warm. Be positive.
Yeah, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again on Thursday.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to get out of here. This is At The Point. Till next time, let's go Devils.